Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is TWiT.
Bandwidth for Coding 101 is provided by CacheFly at CacheFly.com.
This episode of Coding 101 is brought to you by DigitalOcean. Simple and fast cloud hosting built for developers. Deploy an SSD cloud server in 55 seconds. Try it today for free. Visit DigitalOcean.com, and once you sign up, be sure to enter the promo code C101 in the billing section for a $10 credit. And by Lynda.com, the online learning platform with over 3,000 on-demand video courses to help you strengthen your business, technology, and creative skills. For a free 10-day trial, visit lynda.com/C101. That's LYNDA.com/C101. On this episode of Coding 101, we're kicking off the TWiT API. Hello and welcome to Coding 101. It's the TWiT show where we let you into the wonderful world of the Code Warrior / Code Monkey. I'm Father Robert Ballecer. Joining me is Patrick Delahanty. Patrick, it's so good to have you back on the show.
Oh, it's always a pleasure to be here.
Now, of course, you're here because we're kicking off the TWiT API module. All the folks out there who want to make their own apps for TWiT, we're going to give them the secret sauce, beyond just the little brief hint session that we had.
And we've already got 112 people lined up with, they've requested API keys.
Right. Now, let me mention at the very beginning, we're going to be showing off some API keys in our code. They're temporary. We destroy them after each show, so don't even think about using them. They're not going to do you anything. In fact, instead of doing that, instead of wasting your time trying to exploit someone else's key, just write to who? Where do they go to?
They sign up on 3Scale. There are links on the TWiT website. We can give those later in the show. And they can get their own key just for their own use.
Exactly. Of course, we wouldn't have a show if it wasn't for the one, the only, the code guru, the code master, Mr. Lou Maresca, a senior development lead from Microsoft. Lou, it's so good to have you back on the show.
Hey, great to be back. I'm excited about the API.
Yeah. Well, normally I have a code word for you, like super special King Kamehameha Mega Do Who blah 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 guy. But today we're just going to call you Lou because you are our code warrior. Now, Lou, before we jump into the API, people who have watched the TWiT TV network know that I was at DEF CON and Black Hat along with Brian Cranky Hippo Burnett and Brian Chi. And there actually were some really nice stories that we should probably be bringing back into the coding community. The first that I want to talk about is all about bug bounties. Lou, have you heard about bug bounties?
Absolutely. I mean, tons of corporations, including this one over here, does this. I mean, it's a way of getting the really good and well developers that are out in the community that can actually are working on this stuff to provide them with a more incentive way to actually find these issues.
Right. It's all the rage, and the whole idea is rather than having your security people who may be great, you may have some fantastic programmers on your staff, on your payroll, but they tend to be institutionalized. You all think the same way, you've all done the same processes. So it's nice to be able to reach out and perhaps offer an incentive to people who don't think the same way, who don't know your processes, who don't know the proper way to test as set out by your company, and have them look over your code.
Right, and with a little incentive of a reward, hopefully they'll let you know what the bug is rather than take advantage of it.
Exactly. They're trying to take the financial incentive out of hoarding 0 days. The idea is if I can give you, actually this reminds me a lot of when we were still in the heyday of illegally downloading music. And people were saying, look, if you give me a way to legally pay for music, I would prefer to do that, but there's no way to do it now. It's a lot of the same way in the research community, which is if you give me a way to make a living doing security research, I will do that rather than developing these bugs and then selling them off to the black market, because most of us want to be good people.
Exactly.
Yeah. Microsoft had a great booth at Black Hat. It was their Microsoft Bounty program. I think it's called the MSRC. And they made news because they've upped the maximum bounty to $100,000. It means at $100,000 for, I think they were calling it a truly novel exploitation technique. And there's another $100,000 that they will offer out for those who develop a truly novel defensive technique. So if you're willing to start hammering at the newest operating system, you can make some serious cash.
Yeah, you find one a year, you can live off of that.
Exactly, exactly. And the other cool thing about this is the way it was explained to me is the bug bounty is set up internally by the leads of each department. So for example, Lou, if you were to go over to the Microsoft research side and say, hey, look, we've got this new CRM component coming out. We're a little bit worried about it. We'd like to set up a bounty. Could you throw $40,000 at it? That's how it comes out. It's not from up top. It's from the people who are actually programming.
Right, and I think you have to be, as a team, you threat model all of your all your features going forward. So if you feel that you have one that's you're not sure about, like you said, hey, I think I'm adding some more additional customer data, or I'm moving to a government cloud entity endpoint, and I need to be able to verify the data that's going across, or making sure that it's stable or secure. Can we add a bounty to this just in case we've missed something, right? So I think that's a huge ordeal, especially with adding it to the budget and allowing different divisions or features to do that.
Yeah, I think Microsoft's also doing it the right way, which is they start at say 100,000 for X, but then that starts decreasing as time goes by. So the idea, it incentivizes you not to just hold on to it. If you've got it, get it over to Microsoft, get paid, they'll patch it, all done.
And I assume there's some sort of a clause in place where a Microsoft employee can't do this and find their own bugs and collect money.
Actually, well, I bet there's something in there to keep, like Lou can't introduce a bug into CRM then find it.
I did hear of one company that had their own internal bug bounty program, and suddenly there were all these bugs in the code, and the employees were collecting the rewards.
Lou, could you do us a favor? Can you find out if you could possibly collect a bug bounty on the CRM development? Because that would be incredible.
There is a clause that has to do with putting Easter eggs in the code. I think it says obviously we're no longer allowed to do that legally. I think it's part of the. So I'm gonna guess that there's probably you're not allowed to add in bugs. Just for adding bugs, but I'll look for it for sure.
Now, something else interesting about the Microsoft effort, they had their leaderboard up at their booth, the Black Hat, and the funny thing is, of the top 10 people, because there's actually a competition, and Brian and I got super special coins that got us into the event for all of the super special researchers, but the top 10, 5 of them are from Google. They're Google employees who are hammering on Microsoft products. Of the top 5, 3 of them are from Google. So, Microsoft's getting a nice helping hand from their friends across the Silicon Valley.
I do know that each feature team is held accountable for any security exploits that are sent out there. So if you're explicitly putting your own security exploits in there, then it's you're in deep trouble. So
yeah, that's fired. Done.
Yeah.
Okay. So all right. Now Microsoft's not the only company that's doing this. We've had Google actually made a lot of news when they announced their several bug bounty programs in June at Black Hat London. They actually announced that they were offering up to $38,000 for bugs in the devices, the Nexus devices that are on the Google Play Store. Which is nice. Again, it has to be a critical bug, and the stipulations they're a bit more concrete than what you get from Microsoft. It has to be critical. You must provide a test case, and at the same time, you must provide a patch. So you can't just say, oh, here's a bug. It's got to be, here's a bug, here's how I fixed it. Once they accept it and vet it, then you can go ahead and collect your bounty. But it's kind of arbitrary. They get to decide how much a bounty is worth. They also have their patch rewards for finding vulnerabilities in select open source packages. So the open source packages that make up Android, they offer, well, differing amounts. Now, there has been a little bit of pushback on that. For example, Lou, you heard about stage fright, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's one of the open source packages inside of Android that allows for multimedia playback. The security researchers over at Zimperium figured out that you could send a malformed MMS message and basically root the phone, root any device that's running any version of Android 2.2 and above until it's now been patched. Well, they did the research, they created the patch, they submitted it, they waited 6 months, and then they got $1,337. And there's a lot of people in the security research field going, wait a minute, that's something they could have sold on the black markets for 6, if not 7 figures. I mean, can you imagine someone coming to you saying, oh, I've got this thing here, it'll get you into 90% of the mobile devices on the planet. So, yeah, I know about that.
They basically almost screwed themselves going forward. Google's going to have to shell out some serious cash for other exploits to prove that they're willing to give up money for something as big as that now.
Right. Yeah. And actually, I spoke with the Zimperium guys at Black Hat, and good guys. And what they said was the money really was secondary for us. I mean, the money was cool. We used it for drinks. I think that's what they said. But they wanted to be a test case for being a good network citizen, a good internet citizen. In other words, we did this research. This is so horrible. No one should profit from this. But I don't see that being what most people would do.
Well, and the tough part about this program is you have to submit a patch. So it's not just, hey, I found the bug, please do something to fix this, but you need to know how to fix it.
Exactly, exactly. Now, we also saw Facebook has a bug bounty program, so does Yahoo. Even Tesla. Tesla had this very cool bug bounty program at DEF CON. They brought one of their Roadsters into the show floor, and they invited people, like, go ahead, and have at it. Plug into anything, try to find vulnerabilities. And there was even a little, like a whiteboard, and they were saying, look, if you find a significant enough exploit, we'll give you $10,000 off the spot. You know, find a couple of them, buy yourself a Tesla. Yeah. So that's not that kind of incentive's not going to go away anywhere, anyway. Can I use my words? It's not going away anytime soon, is it, Lou?
No, not at all. I mean, you got to remember, anytime you ship a product, whether it's online, on web, on your device, your customers are going to use it, and they're going to find ways to exploit it. And so, if you want to find the deep, dark secrets behind the app, and if there's any exploits, this is probably one of the best ways to do it.
Exactly. Of course, not everyone is on the bug bounty train. Something else that came out towards the end of my time at Black Hat DEF CON was this. You've probably heard about it, audience. It was a bizarre blog post from the Oracle Chief Security Officer, Mary Ann Davidson. This one I really didn't get, especially the timing. It seemed as if this was their Black Hat DEF CON announcement, and it was horrible. She basically said, look, researchers are doing something illegal. They shouldn't be doing it. No one has the right to look at our code. No one has the right to backwards engineer it. And our customers, if they do it, well, they're violating the law because they're breaking the EULA. She also insisted that, look, our researchers are taking care of everything. It's only 3% of the bugs that are found by external third-party security researchers, so we don't understand why all these other companies are rushing to these bug bounty programs. In fact, let me read some of my favorite quotes. She said, many companies are screaming, fainting, and throwing underwear, I don't know what that means, at security researchers to find problems in their code and insisting that this is the way, walk in it. If you're not doing bug bounties, your code isn't secure. Oh, well, we find 87% of security vulnerabilities ourselves. Security researchers find about 3%, and the rest are found by customers. Lou, this hit the security research community because it wasn't just, this is what I think. This was, if you don't think this way, you're an idiot. It was really, really aggressive.
Yeah, I think the one problem is that she's giving metrics that say, hey, this is how many bugs we find internally, how many bugs are found externally. But it could be because you don't have a bug bounty program, and there's not a lot of people, unless a bug's really ticking somebody off, that they're going to report it, right? So I think that's kind of the key is, there's some things I don't like about Windows. Maybe I'll report it, maybe I won't. But if there's a bug bounty behind it, I'm going to report it for sure, right? So I think it's a catch-22 in her case because they're never going to know now, right? Because they're not offering that.
All right. And something else that she said, or she wrote, that I really liked was, she said, why would I throw a lot of money at 3% of the problem without learning lessons from what you really find when I could spend that money on better prevention, like hiring another employee to do ethical hacking who could develop a really good tool we use to automate finding certain types of issues and so on. That right there, that seems so out of touch. Even the Coding 101 audience, the ones who are just starting off, they know that's BS. You're not going to create a tool that's going to find all the vulnerabilities in your software. You can create tools that automate a process of starting it, but this seems so written without any sense of how this actually works.
I mean, she's the chief security officer, and it's essentially she's telling people, don't pull too hard on that door handle. It might break, but don't test it. We'll test it.
Yeah. I think the most insulting part was the fact that he was saying, look, just trust us. Our people will find it. You don't have to worry about anything.
But the statistics, I mean, she's happy with 10% of the bugs being found by customers, which seems like a lot to me.
Yeah. It was, look, why would I pay a bug bounty if my customers will pay me to find bugs for me? I don't,
And that's the ones that get reported, so.
Yeah. Now, the reason why we're doing all this is because we are actually going to be having a couple of bug bounty experts coming on to the show in the very near future. I think this is worthy of Coding 101. This is definitely a programming topic, and it's something that I think some of ours who are on the fence about whether or not they want to get into this lifestyle, this might push you over the edge, because bug bounties is a different way of thinking, and I find that a lot of people find it very exciting. Lou, what about it? Will you become, as Chickenhead21 in the chat room has said, will you become Dog the Bug Bounty Hunter?
You know, I feel like that every day. So I think we find bugs every day. I dog food, what they call dog food, our own applications, our own software. Because if you don't, then sometimes you don't ever know who's going to do it, right? So as long as you don't, unless you don't have a bounty on your software. So we do it every day. I wish that'd probably my nickname internally.
Well, gentlemen, let's set aside the bugs for just a second because we want to get into the TWiT API. Lou has written an application that Leo actually called for. So you're gonna have a leg up on Leo. You'll be able to build the app that he wanted for his Security Now audience. But before we do that, let's go ahead and take a moment to thank the first sponsor of this episode of Coding 101. And, well, it's got to be DigitalOcean. Now, Patrick, let me ask you something. When you started writing software, do you remember what it was like to have to stand up your own hardware?
Oh, it's a pain.
Fun, right?
Yeah.
Lou, you probably did the same thing, right? Wasn't it great to have to make sure that you had the hardware properly configured and all the updates and the patches applied so that your software would actually run just your software? You're just testing what you wrote, not what someone else has installed.
Yeah, hard drive failures, man.
Yeah. That's very enjoyable, very enjoyable. well, we're way past that. And in fact, we're so far past that we don't ever have to worry about hardware again because we've got DigitalOcean. Now, DigitalOcean is based on droplets. The idea is for you to take your service, your program, your application, your whatever, and encapsulate it. Make it possible to run on any hardware that DigitalOcean may have. Now, this gives you a couple of things. First, it gives you reliability because it means that your package, your droplet can move from server to server, area to area, service to service. It also means you can scale it up and down as much as necessary. You can start it off with just a very small deployment for when you want to test something and move all the way up to large scale across the globe deployment. That's the kind of power you get when you use DigitalOcean. Now, DigitalOcean is built for developers, by developers, and it's used by over 400,000 of them, including TWiT TV. You can deploy and configure your droplets via a streamlined control panel or a simple API. You choose your OS, Ubuntu, CentOS, Debian, Fedora, CoreOS, and FreeBSD. A one-click install lets you quickly deploy apps like Django, Docker, Drupal, LAMP, GitLab, MediaWiki, Node.js, WordPress, Ghost, Magneto, OwnCloud, Ruby on Rails, and more. All their servers are built on hex-core machines with dedicated ECC memory and RAID SSD storage. The servers can have up to 20 CPUs, 64 gigabytes of memory, and 640 gigabytes of SSD space. They're also highly scalable, which means you can meet the demands of your rapidly growing application or business without having to move from one data center to the next. You can also deploy servers in regions all around the world, so you can co-locate and regionally locate. They give you gigabit speeds and 99.99% uptime and even dedicated IPs if you need them. Now, for management, you get web console access with HTML5 plus SSH, SFTP, KVM, VNC for virtual desktops, and they've got an active community. This is one of the things that I like the most about DigitalOcean. They've got a forum, they've got a community, they've got people who use this software, this service, day in, day out. If you've got a question, they are the people you want to go to because they could tell you a real-world scenario, a real-world case study of how you fix the things that you need to fix. If you're not using DigitalOcean, you're working too hard. And it's so easy to get started. You can deploy an SSD cloud server in as little as 55 seconds. Now, here's what we want you to do. We want you to try DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean has incredibly affordable and straightforward pricing with servers starting at only $5 per month. Plus, there's also hourly pricing available, starting at less than a penny an hour. But we're going to make it easy. You get to get started today, right now, for free. That's right. Deploy an SSD cloud server with no muss, no fuss for no money. Visit DigitalOcean.com and create an account. Once you confirm your email and account information, go to the billing section and enter the promo code C101 for a free $10 credit. That's plenty to get started and explore what DigitalOcean can do for you and your application. That's DigitalOcean.com. DigitalOcean.com. And once you sign up, enter the code C101 in the billing section for a $10 credit. And we thank DigitalOcean for their support of Coding 101. Lou Maresca, you've got a little bit of a surprise for us. You've written a little bit of an application. Tell us what it does.
You got it. So, with the new API, we wanted to make sure that we had different platforms kind of covered when it came to how do I do this for Windows or C#, and how do I do this potentially even for PowerShell? Can I write a quick script to download a specific set of episodes for a show and so on? So we wanted to kind of cover multiple different platforms. So what I did was I created a couple samples. One was a very simple C# sample using a universal app or Windows 10 universal app, but again, it's portable to Windows Store apps and Windows 8.1, and even portable to even a console app if you wanted to. And then, the whole idea is to build a very small wrapper around the API so that you could go and use it, and then you could expand on it. So if you wanted to do it more, if you wanted to cache the data, that kind of thing. So the whole idea is just a very simple wrapper for now, get everyone started, and then maybe in subsequent shows we can kind of expand on it.
So show us what the most simple in this little basic wrapper program looks like.
Sure. So if you share my screen here, what you can see, let me zoom in really quick. So what you'll see here is this is just I'll show you the solution here, and you'll notice I have a special, it's really tiny, I apologize, but the Solution Explorer is tough to kind of expand on. But you notice I have this special universal DLL file or library that I've put in what we call a TWiT API proxy. It's a very small wrapper around the actual API itself. And so what you can see here is there's just two methods in this proxy, and they're just public methods. And what you'll end up calling in here is just to make a TWiT request. And I call it TWiT REST request. And you can put in there the method. So like, for instance, if we pop over into the API right here, there's a lot of different ways for you to, I think, for instance, if you wanted to grab the shows, a method would be, hey, I want to pass in the shows. And then I have, other parameters here I can put in there. So if I wanted to filter by the name of the show, I could do the label here, or, and this will give me back details about the show. So the whole idea here is the base URL is this, TWiT.api and then /API version 1. But then this little, the actual end of the API URL is the method. So if we pop back over here, if I wanted to pass in shows or episodes or whatever, I could pass it into this and say it there. And then any subsequent parameters after that, if I wanted to do label or if I wanted to do, how many records I want, I could just use that that parameter there.
Let's back up just a second, because remember, we did give people a quick taste of what the API looks like. Right. But let's back up to make sure that they understand what they're doing when they're accessing this. Patrick, if I wanted to, I could construct a call, a string that contains my API key and exactly the parameters that I want to call, like Lou is designing in his program, without having any code whatsoever. If I just knew how I wanted it to look, I could just type it into my address bar and send off to the API.
Not quite. You do have to send the key as part of the header.
Right. So
you can't do it all in the URL, but it is possible to do if you can edit your header in the browser request.
Yeah.
And I did that actually during testing while I've developed some of the backend tools.
Exactly. Well, look, that's what I was thinking. So if I wanted to, I could just start firing off requests to the API.
Yeah.
And as long as I've got the API key, because remember, that's what allows us to actually access the API, because we didn't want everyone to just start hitting the API as many times as they'd like. As long as I know how to construct the string, I can send the proper query.
Yes.
And here's the nice thing about this. All the software that we're going to be designing in the next couple of episodes is just creating that string. As long as we can make it create the proper string of characters, it will do what we want it to do.
Well, you then need to interpret the results that you get back.
Right.
But once you get that string, it's going to send you the results, and then it's just up to you to parse it.
Okay. Oh, well, remind me again, how many times can I hit the TWiT API with a legitimate key?
I believe it's set to 5 times per minute.
Yeah, which will upset some people because we've already had some people saying, wait a minute,
Oh, yeah.
I can only hit it 5 times a minute, but then how am I going to write my app? But folks, the way it's designed is you can hit the app, but if you're going to be designing something that you're selling, you should have your own service that actually collects the information.
Make your own local cache, make your own local database, data structure, whatever you want to do. You can store the stuff locally so that all the thousands of users can hit it, but you only have to make the request a few times.
Actually, who serves it out again?
3Scale.
3Scale. Is it possible to pay 3Scale to like create your own segment so that you can hit their service again and again and again? Do we allow for that?
They do have different payment levels where you can have different.
But we would have to pay. Not them. Okay, no, never mind. All right, Lou, go back to it. So, so you started creating the header for this. Show us what the rest of it looks like.
Well, I wanted to give an example. So, like I think Patrick said, gave a good example. Hey, you can do it in the browser and see how it looks out. So this is a really cool tool, and no one's ever used it before. It's a Windows tool called Fiddler, and you can download it. Eric Lawrence is the developer of Fiddler. He used to work at Microsoft. Now he works at Telerik, but he actually created this tool. And what it does is it listens to all the HTTP traffic.
Anthony, can you get in there? Thank you. Awesome.
Yeah, zoom in there. So what you can tell is you can actually decrypt HTTPS traffic as well. So the cool thing is you'll notice over here to the right, this is the header of this request. And in there you'll see that there's my API ID and the API key here. And these are, again, the sample API keys and IDs that Patrick created. But what you can do is you can actually right-click on this and go to Unlock for editing. And I can actually edit this. In fact, I can resend this request if I wanted to. So I call replay, and I can reissue the request. And you notice down here, it will reissue it. And then down below, you'll actually see the response, and you can see there's this huge JSON blob that comes back, and I can actually format it using this JSON formatter. And you notice now I have every episode of all the episodes of Coding 101 broken down in here. And so you can just use this tool without ever coding anything, and actually they have this composer over here. You can actually compose a request, and you can just send using different parameters. You notice I'm calling shows with a filter label equal to Coding 101. And then again, I'm getting the episodes once I have the ID of the show, which is Coding 101's ID is 1680. So again, I can just issue requests from this tool without ever coding anything, and that's a great way of understanding what the API, what you need to do to send the API, and what you're getting back. Because you'll notice in the inspectors over here, I'll get back the actual response down below here, which again you'll notice has all of the Coding 101 details in there, and then also my actual raw request that I sent up here.
Right.
Pretty cool.
And we'll be going through the parsing of the JSON blob in a bit. We've done it before. You actually did that in your application. You've done that once in your application, Lou, because the data that you get back, it looks unmanageable until you actually parse it.
Now, a tool like Fiddler is great for debugging your code because that helps you determine, is the error in my code or is it in my request?
Right.
And so I had some issues with some stuff I was trying, and I was able to put it in there and see, okay, my request actually works. I'm formatting it right. I'm just doing something else wrong. And it helped me narrow down the issue.
And we'll include a link to Fiddler. So if you want to play with it.
It's a really cool tool.
Oh, yeah.
Really cool.
It's a great tool to play with. By the way, I know there's going to already be people saying, wait a minute, I can use it to intercept HTTPS. It's on your local machine, folks. So you're not actually acting like a man in the middle on somebody else. But now that I've started sending out this raw request, can you actually show us the process of creating that request?
Absolutely. So if we pop back over here, I'll show you. Let's just look at an example. So I built this really stupid, simple example here, which is the main page. I'll show you what the main page looks like. If we zoom, I'm going to get rid of all this stuff here and shut down the app for a second. So you'll see it's just at the top, there's a button that clicks request, and there's a little text box here that will list all of the episodes for the show. Very simple. So if we want to see what the actual button does, we'll pop over here to the view model. And again, it's the whole MVVM pattern. So this is the view model that will handle any of the button clicks or whatnot. And you notice here what I'm doing here is I'm going to call the API so I'm making a TWiT request with the shows method, and in the shows I'm adding a parameter for filter by label, and I'm going to pass in Coding 101 in this little spot here. So you'll notice I'm using In our older C# episodes, we talked about formatting the string, and what I'm doing is I'm just formatting the string, replacing this 0 with the show name that's been escaped. And the reason why you want to escape it is because, like, for instance, Coding 101 has a space in between coding and 101. Security Now has a space between security and now. In order to pass it as a URL, you have to escape it, meaning you have to replace that space with an escaping character. And so in this case, I think it's %20 that will actually be replaced in between there. And so what that'll do is then you'll see in here filter equals and then the show name. So if we go back to Fiddler, you'll see here that's what the escaped. If you can zoom in there really quick, you'll see that's what the escaped version of Coding 101 looks like, and that's what'll get sent to the API. And so once we call this, we can step into it. Let's step into it. So I'm going to actually put a breakpoint right here. You guys interrupt me if I'm going too quickly here. And then the app will kind of pop up here, and it's called Showtime. I'm going to click the button to request. And so here we go. So this is the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pass in, we're going to step in the request method here. So what you'll see here is I'm going to get the base address. In this case, it's the Coding 101, I'm sorry, the TWiT API base address. And then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to spin up an instance of HTTP client. And HTTP client, just I put a little description above there. It's just a class for you to make in .NET code, especially universal apps. The way to make HTTP requests, any of the posts, gets, deletes, and be able to actually send a very customized version of that. In this case, the next couple lines, I'm actually going to build a request. I'm going to set the default headers, and I'm going to add the API key and the API ID. And you can actually add other things in here, like if you wanted to do some tracking data too. I don't know if the TWiT API actually does tracking data around, who's actually sending the API, but you could change in additional header information using that.
We do. I mean, 4Kitchens does track that, right? I mean, we can request that information if we wanted to.
Yeah, we track off of the API, so we can tell what apps are hitting it how many times.
Yeah. Actually, that might be a fun. We'll do that episode later. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Lou. I'm bringing you off the rails here. Come back on.
No worries. No worries. So you could pass in additional header information. If the API tracked it, then you can add it to the header. And so the next line is just formatting the URL. So in this case, we have the base URL, but then the subsequent other items obviously is the method. In this case, I'm adding shows, and again, I'm using that string format parameter, which I'm going to pass in this format, which is these will be replaced with these different parameters down here. So in this case, I'm replacing the 0 with the method, in this case shows. So if I hover over it, you'll see shows there. And then the next parameter is going to be what we call our query parameter. And in this case, I passed in the filter label equals Coding 101. And so that will construct that URL. And so now if I hover over this, again, sorry, it's real small here, but you'll see that it actually shows now my shows URL, my query string has shows with the question mark and then the query parameter there. Yeah, there you go. Zoom in there. Perfect. So that we'll then append that to the base URL, which is this guy up here, which is the Coding 101 URL API. Sorry, the TWiT API URL. So then the next thing is really simple. The next thing is we call this special method, and I actually built this using the async or await pattern that's in, and they really want you to use this pattern in all of universal apps. So this way your user interface doesn't get blocked by any web requests that you're making. And so look up what this await parameter does. But what the next thing we'll do is it'll call inside the HTTP client, and it'll say get request async, and it'll pass it the URL. And so the next thing you'll see, and what I'll do is I'll go turn Fiddler on really quick. And what you'll see is my Visual Studio collecting telemetry data on me, but also what you'll see is the next line will be the request. And so what will pop back over here, you'll see, boom, there's my request.
Okay, let's go ahead and take a look at what the request actually looks like. Can we zoom in there?
Yeah, so let's see if I can zoom in. There we go. How's that?
There we go. So
the request itself, again, has my my query string at the end with the filters label Coding 101, the base URL, TWiT API, and then the shows. And again, the header has the filter there. I mean, the API key and the API ID. Pretty simple. And then you'll notice that the request actually came back. I think it looks like I got throttled, actually. So there was a throttle request here saying that, I already requested this once and I didn't modify the request, so it's telling me, hey, don't do that again. So I'm being throttled. But that's okay. So we have the original one here that I made, and this will be the response that you get back. You actually get this response. So let me zoom into that. And what you'll see here is, let me show you just the text response, so it's easier for me to zoom in. This is the text response, and you'll notice in here,
yay,
you know,
blob.
There we go. So there's a feed information, and there's, you know, the title of the show and the different providers. And if I actually use the formatter, it makes it a little easier to see. And what you can see here is there's a list of shows that come, a bunch of information that comes back about the show. Like, for instance, the video subscription, the audio subscription URLs, the description of that specific episode. So all that will come back with that one specific request. So let's pop back over to the code really quick. So this code will fail now because, again, it wasn't successful. But what you'll see is the next line. It says, okay, I got a response. Does it have a success response code in there? And in this case, it doesn't. Oh, I must have made a second request. Looks like I made a second request. So the second response request was successful. So let's read the contents of that. So the next line will read the contents, and you'll notice if I pop this guy open, again, there's all the JSON blob that has all the data around coding 101 in there.
Now, where are you storing that?
So I'm just storing in a string for now, but you notice data. I put a little to-do in here that says, okay, well, you know, with strings, if you store anything above 85K, it gets pushed over, and this again is getting back into the internals of a managed language like C#. But anything over 85K in a string, you actually get put into the large object heap. And what that means is, at some point in time, that large object has to be cleaned up. And in order to clean it up, you have to run the garbage collector. And the garbage collector will sometimes freeze all of the threads on your application, which the user might even see if it's a high performance app. And it'll freeze and clean that item up. So technically using really large, like for instance, if I were to retrieve all the data for every show in TWiT, it'd be larger than 85K, which means that I'm going to put this object on the large object heap, and it'll end up potentially at some point in time having to be cleaned up. So I put in a little to-do in here to say, okay, let's modify the API later and use a stream instead.
That actually makes sense, right? Because there's only one large object heap in the register, correct?
So there's correct. So there's the heap, and then there's a large object heap. And so the large object heap is something that will persist your memory for a longer period of time. And then again, in order to clean things up from there, the way the runtime works is it'll actually kick off a thread. It'll lock all the other threads that are doing stuff, and it'll kick off this thread. We'll go clean items out of there. And then once it's done cleaning all the items or that it needs to clean out, it'll unlock all the threads, and all the other threads wake up.
Well, I mean, so you wouldn't want any other thread to be accessing the heap at the same time that you're cleaning it. That would be bad.
That's why most runtimes do that. Java even does that. So most managed runtimes, they have these special cleanup threads that will run at any period of time.
Right. All right.
So this is just being stored in a string for now, and then what we do is we return the string back out. So this is the end of the API pretty much. I mean, this is the end of the proxy that we have. I was just one simple method in here that calls, make a TWiT request. And so when I pop back out the stack here, and I pop back out to this code, now I've got I should have here a string that has the TWiT shows in here. So I step the next line, and you notice now I have a variable that has all this. Now, notice the next line is actually using a special, let me zoom in some more, is using a special JSON converter. And this JSON converter is actually a NuGet library that you can use that will do what they call deserialization. And so I'm going to show you something pretty neat. I think we talked about this before, but there's a cool tool out there called JSON Utils.
I think so, yes.
Yeah, so this is a cool tool. I don't know if you've used it, Patrick, before, but you can, yeah. So you can basically copy a blob in here. So I go to Fiddler and go steal the JSON blob, text blob in here, and I can copy it in here. So if I were to go to text output here and take it from my request here, let's take it from here. Yeah. So if I were to steal this request here, this entire thing, and copy it, and then I can go paste over here. What it'll do is it'll actually create a class name. So I'm going to call this TWiT shows, and it'll actually create, and I'm going to actually put a JSON property on it, and I'm going to click submit. And what it'll do is it actually will generate
all the different properties I have access to.
Yeah, exactly right. So it'll generate all the different
that's pretty.
objects in there.
Folks, if you're not using that tool, you're working too hard.
That's right. So basically what it is, I'm going to go back over to the code really quick, and we'll see that in here I have Twitch shows, and that's zoomed in enough, looks like. And you'll notice in here that there's, Twitch show class, there's another feed provider class, there's all these what we call strongly typed versions of those JSON blobs for every class. And so the cool thing about it, now I can what they call deserialize, meaning I can take this text that I got back from the REST API and create actual objects off of it. And so that's what the next line does here. So I'll pop it back over into the model view. And the next line right here, which I already stepped over, calls this special new which is called JSON.net. And JSON.net will call a special deserializer, and it'll say, hey, I want to deserialize Twitch shows using this, let me get this breakpoint out of the way, using this blob that's just the string that I just got back of all the show details. And so the next line will happen. Now I got this object called Twitch shows, and unfortunately, again, if you can zoom in there, I'll show you what this object's got in there now. So it's not letting me click on it. There we go. So if I just pin this right here so you can see it, it disappeared. Okay, there we go. So now it shows I have one show in my count. And then if I actually expand that and expand it again, now here's all the strongly typed details about the show. So there's a description, again, about Coding 101. It has all the different audio subscriptions in there in a collection. It has all the details about the show, and it's all strongly typed. So this means now I can access it by just using properties of this object, which is kind of cool.
All right. Now, we should note we've got Sharpay UK in the chat room right now his brain is leaking. I get it. It's normal. It's okay, folks. Remember, we're going to make this code available, so you're going to be able to step through it at your own pace. You can watch this episode over and over again. But let's bring it back. Essentially, what Lou has done is the first part of his program created the string that he sent over to the TWiT API. The TWiT API responded with a blob. That's that JSON blob that we keep talking about. That's all of the data that we requested in just one long string. Now he's using a tool, a deserializer, in order to break that out into something that actually makes sense. Rather than you having to sift through and parse each individual line and figure out what data goes into what column, it will actually do it for you. And in conjunction with the tool that he's using, which is Visual Basic, Visual Studio, it allows you to essentially automatically add those categories so that you can use them in your IDE, which is a long way of saying he sent stuff out, he got stuff in, and now he's turning it into something that's organized. So it's really not that complicated. I know that a lot of this sounds like magic, but once you step through this a few times, you'll start to see that this is actually the same across all programming languages.
Absolutely,
This is what you have to do, right?
Yeah,
Every
I get
day.
back the same JSON.
Yep.
I use different code, but it's essentially the same thing.
Yeah. All right, so now that we've sort of dealt with the emergency triage of brain leakage, what's next, Lou?
Got it. So I think, like you just said, I mean, we're taking the blob, we're just deserializing it into an object, and so now this object. Now, normally, and Patrick can attest to this, sometimes writing queries into either JSON or even XML can be cumbersome. And queries are meaning you have to use a special query language that you go out and you'll query into this big blob and find all the different nodes and those subsequent child nodes and so on and so forth. And you'll go all the way, you'll kind of like walk the tree of nodes and find what you're looking for. And you could do that. You could write that code, and that can be super complex. Or you could take the blob, deserialize it into an object, and an object describes all of its properties and attributes. And it will, now I can just access it just by using that. And so if you notice, if you go back to my screen here, if I were to just start adding code in here and do Twitch shows, you notice the next thing, if I do dot, I can actually access the shows by property. Sorry, again, this is kind of small. And now I can say, okay, I want the first show, which is the Coding 101, and then I'm going to get all of its properties. So if I got the description, so if I actually go to the debugger and plug this in, I'm going to call it the immediate window. If I plug this in right here and hit go, you notice, boom, the description pops out in here, where it basically says, here's the Coding 101 description of the show.
There we go. Yeah.
So really cool,
and remember, you didn't have to write that. So Lou didn't write that in. That was created by the deserializer. It looked at the JSON and figured these are the properties you should have access to because this is what I'm seeing back from the input. Again, so much easier to write it that way than to sit down and actually scan through a JSON and say, okay, I need this property, give me this.
Right. And so we can give them an example just to show them how hard. So maybe next episode we can give them an example of how to use a JSON query to go in and query the actual JSON and find all the properties. And we can show you, okay, this is 100 lines of code versus just 1 line of code. So it's much easier to do it this way.
Lou, wait, we're going to take them home uninterrupted after this. But first, let's go ahead and take another moment to thank the second sponsor of this episode of Coding 101. Now, this sponsor has a place near and dear to my heart because I understand that we cannot give you all the information you need to do these projects. We're giving you a taste. We're getting you interested. We're getting you to the point where you realize this is easy once you get past all the foreign language thing going on in your brain. Now, you need a place where you can go on the internet to fill in all the gaps of the knowledge that we're trying to give you. And what I'm suggesting is that place you go is lynda.com. Now, lynda.com is the place for movers, for shakers, for doers, for people who want knowledge, because that's what Lynda is, a repository for knowledge on the internet. It's for problem solvers, for the curious, for the people who want to make things happen. Maybe you want to learn how to develop an app. Maybe you want to master a new programming language. Maybe you want to take better photos or just get job skills for that next time you hire yourself out. Well, lynda.com can give you all that and more. Some of the latest lynda.com courses that I can recommend are Java Essential Training, Database Fundamentals, Core Concepts, Debugging the Web, JavaScript and Visual Studio 2015 Essentials, Exploring the Visual Studio Ecosystem. Of course, there's also the latest updates to Code Clinic, which I love. It's a multi-course series where lynda.com experts look at common code challenges and offer their solutions using C, C++, C#, Java, JavaScript, PHP, Python, R, Ruby, and Swift. Now, we've been using lynda.com here at the studio. You've probably heard our story of how when we switched over from Macs using Final Cut to PCs using Adobe Premiere Pro, how we had lynda.com for our editors so that they could find the common shortcuts, so they could figure out all those annoying little things that didn't quite make it over in the translation. Well, lynda.com is not just good for them, but it's also good for me when I need to find that reference for a piece of forgotten knowledge in C#, or when I'm looking through some of my old programs that were written in Fortran. Lynda.com has something for everyone. Now, with the lynda.com membership, you can watch and learn from top experts who are passionate about teaching. You can stream thousands of video courses on demand and learn on your own schedule. That's important because when you learn according to the way that you learn rather than the way that people want you to learn, it means that the information sticks. And we want sticky information because sticky information gives you the skills in the future that you need. You could browse through each course transcript to follow along, and you can search for an answer for an individual question that you're having rather than having to search through an entire, say, 10, 20, 30-minute course. You can also download tutorials and watch them on the go on your iOS or Android devices, and you can create playlists that you can share with your friends if you want them to get on the same knowledge train that you're riding. Now, your lynda.com membership gives you unlimited access to training on hundreds of topics, all for one low price. Now, whether you're looking to become an expert, you're passionate about a hobby, or you just want to learn something new, I really, really want you to visit lynda.com/C101. Sign up today for your free 10-day trial and try Lynda for free. That's lynda.com, lynda.com/C101. And we thank lynda.com for their support of Coding 101. Lou, let's take the folks home. So they've got their JSON blob, they've got their properties. Now what do they do with it?
Sure. So I think the first thing that we want to do is, so now we've just got the details of the show. And so we want to say, okay, now let's go get all the episodes. So this is where it gets a little bit more complex from the request standpoint, because there's a concept in the API that Patrick actually went over called paging. And what that means is we're going to return, like, let's say 25 episodes at a time. And let's say for us, I think there's 80 episodes. So that means that we're going to have to call the API a couple times here to be able to get 4 times to be able to get all the details of the episodes. And so this is a special loop that I've created that will actually deal with how many episodes that we have left to actually go get more details about it. So you'll notice I'm actually accessing the ID of so in this case, the show ID for Coding 101 is 1680, and then I'm grabbing the title, which actually will display on the UI. That's what that line's all about. Then the next line is just a while loop. And so what we'll see is I'm going to make multiple separate calls to the TWiT API, basically to get each page. And so what you'll see is I'll pop over to Fiddler again. Let's delete all this stuff here. And you'll see the next call that I'll make is going to be a call to actually get the episode details. So you'll see down here is, you'll notice that let me zoom in on the header here. Whoops. Back with Fiddler. Zoom into the header here. And what you'll see here is I made a request on the show filter 1680 and to get the episodes. The episodes is the method, and then again, the query parameter is the filters shows equals 1680. And you notice down here, I got this huge JSON blob. And again, it's saying there's, in this JSON blob, excuse me, saying there's actually 80 episodes. And then if I actually go back to my code here, and I step out, you'll notice that I deserialized the episodes into a episodes object, and that's what this line's all about. TWiT episodes object. And if I hover over it, again, it's going to say, okay, you have 80 episodes, but you only got 25 back. And so I want to make sure I get all 80. So what will end up happening is in here, I'll actually extract out. So for each episode, I'll spin through and I'll add it to a collection. This way I can keep a collection of all the episodes.
Patrick, is that an API thing? It will only give you 25 episodes?
Yes.
Okay. So you can get 25 at a time?
Yes.
I got it. And that's just to prevent the blobs from getting ridiculolously huge?
Yeah, because there's a lot of data in there for every individual episode. 25, that's huge.
Like, for example, if you were to download all of Security Now, you'd sit there while your computer goes, I don't know where to put this.
If you're looking at GizWiz episodes, that's like over 1,600.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. So you have to step back and ask for the next 25.
That's right. And so the way that TWiT API does it is if I pop into here, so there's different ways to do it. So the way that Twitter API does it is Twitter API, since it's dynamic, since different, there could be hundreds of thousands, if not millions of tweets. They use a special thing called a correlation ID, which means that you pass it the special ID and it'll go and find the next page of results. But the way that the TWiT API does it is inside the episodes, the object, there is a links. And inside the links object, there's a next. And that next URL is this guy right here. So if you notice at the end of the URL, again, I apologize, it's so small, it won't let me zoom in here.
Oh,
but you'll notice at the end.
Page 2, yeah.
Yep, at the end it says page 2, right? So it says, okay, same exact request, just get the next page. And so I'll steal that, and I'll set that value, and then the next time I loop through, I'll make that same request. Again, I'll step over this and go back to Fiddler, and you'll see that the next one, again, is page 2. And then what I'll get back again is another 25.
Now, is there something in the API that tells you when you've reached the end?
Right. So there's two ways to do it. From what I've seen, Patrick could correct me. One is you can keep a count, which is what I'm doing here. I'm saying I got a count, and this is what I got back, and I'm adding to that count. And once I know that I noticed that TWiT, the Coding 101 has only 80 episodes. So once I get to 80, I'm done. So I'll just keep a count. Or you can just keep checking the links URL to see if the next URL is empty or no.
Got it. So if it advances to another page, then you've got more. If not, you can call it in.
Yeah. Right.
All right. Okay. So now we've got all 80 episodes stored on our local machine.
Right.
What are you going to do with it?
So now what you can do is you can do whatever you want. So now here's a list. Here's again back to the UI again, and now it gives me a list of everything when they aired. And now the option is now I have all the properties of that information. So like, for instance, if I wanted to display the image for every one of these, or if I wanted to display the actual, if I want to actually go and download the stream, the video files, or the audio files for that, if I wanted to create like a podcaster application, I could use the data that's in these, and that's not actually part of this app, but we'll get into that in later episodes if we can, is just how to go and download what we call that extra, the CDN data. So like, for instance, if I wanted to get the video files or the audio files or, the show notes, that kind of thing, I can go and download them separately just using the URLs that are in these objects.
Which, by the way, you already created. We did a C# module not too long ago that you created a media player using Visual Studio. So if you want to combine those modules right now, you can actually create yourself a fully functioning Code 101 or any show on the TWiT TV network player that will reach back to the entire archive.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Now, Lou, unfortunately, we're running out of time, so we do have to call it for a close. But can we tease the audience a little bit? What will they expect out of the next episode? Because now that we've got this information, we have a relatively good way to display it. What's next? What do we have to create next?
So I think the next thing, like I said, is being able to go download the assets that have to do with the show. So if you wanted to go and look at the Smitty episode, you wanted to download that video, or you wanted to download the file, or if you wanted to, to stream that information, we could do that. So we'll add some code to do that. Another thing is we want to be able to just return. So now that I have all the episodes, I don't want to return all the episodes every time, because again, like you said, I can technically only maybe make 5 requests every minute, so for my API. So for me to not get beyond that, I might want to store the episodes locally, and then the next time I request, I only get the newest episodes. So that means I store the last time I made the request, and then I only make the request between a specific date time. And so I can do that by creating some simple code to store the last time I made the request, and I just get the newest episodes. So that's kind of a cool way of making sure that you never go beyond your API limit. So those are some of the expansions that we'll make on the app.
Right. And I don't know if it'll be ready for this module, but I'm making it for know-how. I actually created a glowing panel that will change colors depending on whether or not there's an episode of my favorite TWiT podcast currently ready for download. So, and that's actually using a Raspberry Pi, the TWiT API, and it works.
Oh.
And well, I burned out the LEDs, but that was just me. I overdrove them because I wanted it brighter. I don't feel right unless I break it at least once. Patrick, again, remember folks, we are deleting this API key as soon as we finish airing, so don't try to use that one. Apply for one on your own. We'll make sure that the links are in the show notes.
Yeah.
But you've got some interesting stuff coming up with the API. What are you playing with?
Actually, my latest project was irc.twit.tv, which has been sorely neglected for years.
Just 10 years.
So I'm going to update it to last year's look.
Oh, fantastic.
So at least it matches live.twit.tv. So they're going to look the same. But that's my latest project
like
here.
That's good. That's good.
Actually, I had a question for Patrick real quick. I apologize. So,
go ahead.
Patrick, there is a demo URL that comes in the API that you can use. Do you need an API key for that?
I don't know, actually. I haven't tried it.
If you look at if you show my screen really quick one more time, sorry, you'll notice there's a private/API mock.com. It's a mock API endpoint, and I have this special little debug flag. So I don't know if you could use that. I don't know, for free without having an API key.
I'd be very skeptical because people would be hitting that over.
People can apply for an API key, and I approve them every business day. So it's quick and easy. There's 112 people with one already.
If you're watching Coding 101 and you like this and you don't have an API key, there's something wrong with you. It's free. Right to Patrick. He's a good guy. Could you let's start with Patrick. Could you please tell folks, because you're going to be on with us for the next couple of weeks, where can they find you, where can they find your work, and where can they find, more importantly, the work of your wife?
Well, my stuff, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Delahanty, and my horrible website is adequate.com, but my better website is animecons.com. And my wife, she just came out with a book last month called Awkward, which you can find at bookstores everywhere. Awkward by Svetlana Chimikova.
Or on Amazon. That's where I get mine.
It's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble.
And if you send it to the TWiT Brickhouse, she will sign it, and then we'll keep it.
Well, no. We're not paying postage back. Yeah, there's the book.
Get out of here, Burke. Burke's been crazy. And Lou Maresca, my Super King Kamehameha co-host, who's our code warrior for these modules. Where can people find you and your work at Microsoft?
Well, you can always find me on Twitter, LouMM, and also you can find all my work that I do at Microsoft at crm.dynamics.com.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. This has been so much fun. I love playing with the TWiT API just because you never know who's going to make the next really good-looking application. Finally, a way to get all my TWiT shows and my TWiT goodness without having to deal with a clunky app that crashes every 5 minutes.
I really want somebody to use the API to take the guest data and make the 6 degrees of Padre.
That's bad. That's a bad, don't do that. Don't do that. Until next time, don't forget that you can find us on twit.tv/code so you can get all of our old modules. If you want to see the C# module that Lou did to make the media player, so you can combine it with what you're learning about the API, you can get it in there. If you want to subscribe so you can automatically get the newest episodes on your device of choice, be it your phone, your tablet, your laptop, your desktop, your PC, your Mac, whatever, this is the place to go. Again, twit.tv/code. Also, don't forget that you can find us on the Twitters. You can find me at twitter.com/PadreSJ. You can find Lou at twitter.com/LouMM. And you can find Patrick at twitter.com/P Delahanty. That's right. we do all the socials. We will do this show live most Mondays at 2:30 p.m. Pacific time. Just go to live.twit.tv so you could see the show, pre-show, post-show, and everything in between. And if you're going to watch live, go ahead and jump into our chat room at irc.twit.tv, which will soon be updated by our man here himself.
Tonight.
Tonight. It's a good place to jump in to find out what's actually going on with the TWiT TV army. Thanks to everyone here at the studio who makes this show possible. Of course, to Lisa and to Leo for letting us do Coding 101. To Anthony, our TD today, he's deathly afraid of cameras, but maybe he'll say something into the microphone.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's a fun show. Yep.
That's it.
Yeah.
All right. That's all he's got for us. Until next time, you are...
P. Delahanty.
I'm Father Robert Ballecer, and that's...
Maresca.
And Lou, you go ahead and say it this time. This has been Coding 101.
End of line.